When it comes to building a fresh-looking, high-quality vehicle at a reasonable price, Mazda excels, and the 2020 CX-5 is no exception. But for this little crossover to truly thrive in a crowded market, it's got to do more than just that. So stick around and find out if it does.
If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel so you can help me take this to the next level. Thank you. Now back to the review.
Up front, the design is, well, pretty bold. You're gonna have full LED headlights as standard equipment, and this spot here is also kind of awkwardly empty. You can get fog lights on the CX-5. They're just really tiny, kind of embarrassingly small for fog lights. Now, this is an SUV, so I'm gonna mention it. Ground clearance is 7.5 inches. Not super impressive considering that the Subaru Forester is 8.7, but it's definitely average for the class. What isn't is this awesome metallic paint.
This is the free deep crystal blue mica, but I am especially smitten with the $600 Soul Red metallic. Briefly, I'd like to thank Royal Mazda for hooking me up with the CX-5 for today's review. Royal Mazda is a small, honest dealership in Bloomington, Indiana. If you're looking for a new Mazda, check them out.
Now here's a quick rundown of the trims. You have the Sport, Touring, Grand Touring, then you have the Grand Touring Reserve, and then you got the Signature. And there are a few optional packages that I will mention. Even from the base trim, the Mazda CX-5 is stylish. You have 17-inch rims that are standard. They're alloys, they kind of got this machined gray finish to them. Step up to the Grand Touring and you will get 19s.
For base wheels, I'm impressed. And this low-cost style trend is continued elsewhere with the standard LED headlights, body-colored doors, and body-colored mirrors with integrated signals.
If you get the Grand Touring with an optional package or any of the further up trims, you'll get a power folding function, if you care at all. Now, a very practical feature is, of course, keyless entry. You're gonna get that standard on the Touring. Standard on the CX-5, you got a spoiler, I guess if that's what you want to call it, and some real exhaust pipes, along with some pretty stylish taillights that are LED on the Grand Touring trim and up.
And as a special bonus, all models have less body cladding than the CX-30. Looks are subjective, but I personally think the understated body lines and the bold front end make for a more elegant, grown-up look for this little Mazda. It's sleek. What do you guys think though? Let me know in the comments section.
Now, the interior of the Mazda CX-5 is where it starts to look a little bit dated compared to its competitors. The CX-5 interior is competitive, but I'd be lying if I labeled it as top of the class. The layout is smart. Let's start with the gauge cluster.
Analog gauges come as standard equipment. I like how Mazda implements a small display in lieu of another gauge. It looks modern and adds functionality. Want more screen? The Grand Touring will have a larger display to replace the Speedo. Push button start is standard. This steering wheel is outshined by the new wheel in the Mazda 3. The controls just aren't as tactile as they are in the 3, and it overall looks cheaper. Compared to the Segment though, this is competent, and the grip is great.
The 3 continues to outshine the CX-5 with regards to the infotainment system. This is the older Mazda unit. It's also smaller. It's a 7-inch display. Now the system is snappy. You can get an 8-inch touchscreen unit on the Grand Touring Reserve, but at least most CX-5s will have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Only the base Sport trim does not get it. 4 speakers come standard on the CX-5. The Touring trim will get 6, which, I mean, honestly, that should be the standard. The Bose 10-speaker unit is, well, better. I think that the Harman Kardon systems used in Subarus might have an edge on it, but at least you can get this Bose system on the Touring trim so long as you choose the preferred package, like what I have here. Things are laid out in a very easy to understand way. You know, there's not button overload or anything like that. I would have to say that the UI is more simple than what's found in the new Mazda 3, and I also think I like this dial more. It feels more physical, it's a little bit more satisfying. The interior itself is pretty tasteful, lots of stitching that looks pretty real.
The vents look like metal, and the plastics don't look or feel too budget-minded. Let's just ignore the piano black stuff. To compliment Mazda some more, I must say that the suede leather combo in the Touring is sweet. I love the traditional shifter look and feel, and I have an affinity for these clicky dials to the dual zone automatic climate control, which is standard on the Touring.
The fit of everything is good. Soft touch rest points are present for your elbows. For your knees, it's kind of a weird story because on this car, I don't get that, but if you step up to the Grand Touring, they actually do add in a little bit more padding for where your knees rest. I'd also like to touch on how the cabin feels. It's a little bit more closed off. It doesn't feel like a cockpit because nothing's really driver oriented. You just feel like you don't have too much space for your knees to go. The dash seems a little high. It's not as open and airy as, say, the Volkswagen Tiguan, the Subaru Forester.
I like the open interior vibe, but some may prefer this. The seats here are soft and supportive, but I think the inner portion is too prominent.
You got a 6-way power adjustable seat with manual lumbar on the Touring trims. Power lumbar will come on the higher trims. The Sport trim is just going to have manual seats. They can also be heated if you choose the Touring trim. Go up to the Grand Touring and you can choose the Premium package. What that's going to give you is cooled seats, heated rear seats, heads-up display, heated steering wheel, among a few other things. Really, the thing that exposes the CX-5's age the most is the tech. That touchscreen looks fine when it's shut off. You can really tell that it's lower resolution and just smaller than what a lot of other companies are using nowadays. It also has a lower quality backup camera, and the phone audio is from Mazda's older cars, which again wasn't very good. So if you're on the phone with someone, it's not going to sound top-notch like it does in some other cars. Overall, the interior is competitive, but it definitely feels dated. I would say though that it's redeemed by its simplicity and overall quality. Now, space-wise, I am pretty good. I mean, obviously, because I'm in the front row of an SUV, but I'll adjust myself into a comfortable position, and now I'm gonna hop in the back. The rear seat of the Mazda CX-5 is comfortable. Space is adequate. Again, I'm tall. I can fit behind myself okay. My knees do hit the back of the seat. It's soft, so it's not terribly uncomfortable. I have more than enough headroom. Honestly, I have more headroom back here than I do up front. So that's not a complaint. At least I have rear vents back here, which are optional. I also have this drop-down center console as standard. I have soft touch where my elbows will rest. All right, well, first things first, you get a power rear gate with the preferred package, as I mentioned before. It also comes standard on the Grand Touring. Now, space back here is not what I would exactly call abundant, but it does have these handy releases that can take down the middle seat if you'd like, or that side and that side. What I like about the rear area is that it goes pretty low. Now, when you fold down the second row, it's not a perfectly flat load floor. Is this as practical as a Subaru Forester or Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V? No. The CX-5 is not the Swiss Army knife of this segment. It never was or intended to be one. But the Mazda CX-5 does go above and beyond what other crossovers do when it comes to driving dynamics. Under the hood, we have a naturally aspirated 2.5 liter making 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. Respectable figures for this class. Sorry, car, I know you don't like this. Come on in 60.
It achieved 60 in 9.1 seconds for me, ahead of the Subaru Forester, but still a mid-pack at best number. The engine does not feel happy when being wrung out. If you want more grunt, there is an available turbo 2.5 liter that makes 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, and I'll talk more about that later. That should hustle the Mazda to 60 in the mid 6-second range.
It doesn't have the most inspiring noise. I like this engine in the Mazda 3. It still feels pretty responsive in this bigger Mazda CX-5. But the bigger star of the show here is the 6-speed automatic. It responds very well to driver input. You don't need to give it a ton of gas for it to wake up. Whenever you're going up hills, you don't have to wait, which I've found to be an issue in some other cars in the segment that have traditional automatics like the Volkswagen Tiguan. Shifts are smooth too. I mean, it's what I want out of an automatic transmission if I'm going to buy one. And the linear feel of it makes it more natural than a CVT typically is, even though some CVTs like the Subaru Outback and Subaru Forester, those are pretty good.
And if you put the CX-5 into sport mode, the transmission becomes paranoid, dropping gears at the slightest prompt. The steering does not change weight in sport mode, and I'm fine with that.
It's super precise. The weight has a nice build up to it. It's on the light side, but it's heavier than what I found in the Mazda 6. The steering also has a pretty quick ratio for the class. It's not darty by any means. For what this is, excellent. Nailed it, Mazda. The road noise is also kept under control. For the class, its road dynamics are great. Taking it around these windy corners, I'm having fun. You have standard G vectoring control. To sum it up, it's supposed to make sure that you don't need to put in as many inputs in the steering wheel to keep you in a straight line or keep you going where you want to go, whether the conditions are bad or good. And yeah, I would concur. This is a pretty effortless drive.
Yes, others might be more plush, like the Subaru Outback or Honda CR-V, but the CX-5 is fun, confident, and direct, and it is still comfortable. While road imperfections translate themselves into the cabin, they're never jarring. Mazda got the dampening right here, and with the thick sidewall of these tires, I'm not worried about potholes. The CX-5 is the Mazda for beat-up northern roads. The aforementioned awkward seats are the only thing that could use a little bit of work.
If you want your CX-5 to go above and beyond the laws of physics, you can opt for a 2.5-liter turbocharged engine. That's going to make 227 horsepower if you're on regular gas, 250 if you're on premium, and 320 pound-feet of torque, an additional 10 pound-feet from last year. On the highway, I mean, this engine, I wouldn't have any problems with it, but if you want a true effortless driving experience, opting for the turbo isn't a bad move. As it stands, this gets 30 miles to the gallon and 24 in the city, which I think is right about what a Subaru Outback with the turbo does.
Opting for the snail-fed CX-5 drops the combined mileage by 2 miles per gallon. While I wouldn't mind picking up the CX-5's tab, it is thirstier than average. Care about avoiding accidents? The CX-5 is ready to compensate for your mistakes with standard forward collision mitigation, adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, and high beam control. And unlike many competitors, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert comes standard here.
One thing I have not talked about yet is reliability, and that's a big benefit to the Mazda CX-5 and the Mazda brand as a whole at the moment. Now, I definitely recommend the standard naturally aspirated engine over the turbo if you want the most reliability, just because there's more things to go wrong with that turbo. And there's, more wear and pressure on the engine. But this 2.5 liter has been pretty robust through its life cycle in the Mazda lineup. My girlfriend used to have it was like 2010 Mazda 3 or 11 Mazda 3 with that engine. She got rid of it with 186,000 miles, and the only thing she needed to do was a valve cover gasket, and that's because she drives in the city all the time. I talked about this with the Mazda 3 video, but Mazda was called the most reliable brand recently by Consumer Reports.
Their transmissions are made in-house, parts are cheap, they design these with longevity in mind. Consumer Reports showed no problems with the CX-5. A little digging online has led me to a similar conclusion. The biggest issue they used to have was with LED light failure, which is surprisingly expensive. Still, I would have zero problems recommending any Mazda CX-5. If reliability is the highest priority, I'd point you toward a naturally aspirated model, and that's about it. All of these cars are direct injected, so that also means you should probably clean the intake valves every 40,000 miles or so. I'd also recommend to clean and wax your car regularly to deter rust from forming, especially over the wheel wells. Mazdas are somewhat notorious for that.
When it comes down to buying the Mazda CX-5, I think, again, Mazda missed the mark with packaging. The Touring trim with the preferred package is a good value.
Making the turbo standard on the Signature and Reserve makes a loaded CX-5 very expensive. Maybe have the turbo be an option so people don't have to pay for something big they might not want. Packaging is not a fatal flaw of the CX-5 though. My advice, if you want to get a loaded CX-5 for a reasonable price, get a Grand Touring with the previously mentioned premium package. Honestly, the CX-5 doesn't have a big flaw. Yes, it's mid-pack on versatility and in-car electronics, but it excels at doing what cars were meant to do: drive. And on top of that, its dependability means the CX-5 will be doing that for a long time, all the while providing a comfortable, stylish, and fun-to-drive package. If you're looking for a new SUV and you don't need box-on-wheels practicality, the 2020 Mazda CX-5 should be on your shortlist. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
The layout is smart. Let's start with the digital gauge cluster. Okay, come on. You don't need to be doing this.